Let's bring him on in. Man, when I first started getting involved with this, I remember I used to watch the show Crosstalk, and I wanted to get educated about what was going on in the Ukraine. And there was a guy who just slayed it. Another gentleman who I got a lot of information from was Kevin Zeese, who's no longer with us, popularresistance.org. But the guy who really paved the way and gave you some insight to what was going on. And it was great when he had pushback. It was great when he just was able to let loose. This guy's, he's a beast, ladies and gentlemen. He's also one of my favorite guys. He's got the best haircut in town. If I had his brains with my good looks, man, I'd be a billionaire. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Sleboda.
Pasta, thanks for having me. It's always an honor and a pleasure to be on the conversation couch.
I gotta laugh. You've been doing that since the get-go. You know, with today's appearance, you are now still in the lead for the most. I think the most appearances on the conversation couch has got to be you. We've done everything from talking about China to the Caucasus to Russia to Ukraine to Israel, Ethiopia, the damn Egypt, the Renaissance. I mean, man, you've come on and educated us so much and done it with so much class and style, bro. It's amazing today that I'm starting my new channel and you are here with me. Thank you so much, brother.
Pasta, flattery will get you everywhere with me.
I know that. You said that on the very first show, and I've been, you know, that's why I talk about that beautiful haircut, man.
Yeah.
So, listen, Fiorella is going to be along shortly. She's Fiorella-ing. Tell me what it's like right now, right? I mean, how do you feel about the world and what's going on? I mean, so much has happened in your whole journalism career, and you know, we were both Navy boys. You mean we talked about, you know, back in the Navy in the day, and I mean, you're a regular contributor on Sputnik. You know, I hear you on Garland's show. You come on my show. I talked about you being on Crosstalk back in the days. But where we're at right now, I mean, the big question is World War III coming? Are we already there? Or is this just par for the norm? Go ahead, buddy.
Okay, first pushback. Not a journalist. No, not a journalist. Analyst.
Political analyst, commentator.
Yeah,
whatever.
There we go.
Whatevs.
Not the fourth estate. Anyway, so are we in World War III? That's a good question, and that's something that's been keeping me up at nights lately, to be honest. I think we are, but World War III doesn't look like what a lot of people thought it would look like. World War III is a war that is being fought over the future of the global order, of the world order. After World War II, there was a huge change in the existing world order. The United Nations came into effect, and then Bretton Woods, the entire world, the international relations of the world changed after World War II, and even after World War I. With the Treaty of Versailles, the establishment of the temporary body before the United Nations, that itself, it didn't last long, but was a big change as well. The war, World War III, as it's being fought right now, is not going to be one titanic battle, and it's not immediately going to go to nukes or other weapons of mass destruction, as some people would like. Doesn't mean it won't end that way. I mean, that possibility, I think, is faint, but it's still out there somewhere. It's more likely than it was, even if, the chance is still small, but anything can happen.
Okay. Let me stop you there 1 second and ask a quick question. I don't mean to interrupt because I don't mean to cut you off. Are you implying that it could end or we can see a diminishing of human life via bioweapons or something else? Or
sure.
I mean,
I'm sure you've been paying attention to the news that Russia and China have been screaming about these U.S. biolaboratories positioned around their countries. The research, the Pentagon, not they say, oh, this is just harmless research being conducted by the Department of Health, no, by the CDC, no, oh, it's being conducted by the Pentagon, but you can trust us, it's completely innocent, right? Okay, whatever. There might be some sheeple that will buy that pablum. But the U.S. has been constructing a global, I mean, forget its military bases. It also has a global network of bio-research laboratories for experimenting and testing offensive biological weapons, right? And they've been doing a lot of research into trying to crack the key into genetically tailored viruses that will target specific ethnic groups, right?
Hold on.
Over other.
Oh, are we saying that my political analyst and friend Mark Sleboda is getting a little bit tinfoil hatty right now, or are we merging
even
together?
hatty. Russia has presented the documents of what
Yes,
has
but
been
you know
done
very well.
at the United
You know very
Nations.
well that the people like Alex Jones who have talked about this stuff for years were told that they're just tinfoil hats. What I'm trying to display right now with Mark, and what I'm trying to get out of you is where's the rubber meeting the road? Like, to a lot of the people who talked about what was considered to be conspiracy theory, vaccines, bioweapons that were tailored for certain, DNAs and everything like that. Where are we in this whole kind of in other words, you were talking about since World War II. There's a lot of people who think there's no such thing as nation states. They think there's just globalists running things. And there's people who've dove further into this who think that that is true. But entities like Putin and Russia and Xi Jinping have broke apart from that. And now there's kind of a headbutting of those two nation states or individuals with the globalists who won't, that pretty much run everything in the United States. The United States, these congressional members or lawmakers are nothing more than stenographers for the ruling class. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I think there can both be nation states. There can be states that aren't nation states. The U.S. isn't a nation state, right? It's got many ethnicities. The idea of a nation state, the terminology is one ethnic group, one country, right? That one political unit. So neither Russia nor the U.S. are nation states. A lot of people, of course, are surprised by that, but Russia has more than 200 just indigenous ethnicities and dozens of others and 5 major state-supported faiths and so on. So there can be both. I don't like the term globalists. I think it's extremely inaccurate. I think it's inaccurate. There are, because a globalist, I think the terminology itself thinks someone who puts the interests of the globe in front of, say, their individual state or nation or whatever, when these people simply put their own elite interests over everything else, right? Their own game.
Can I throw a little something in there? I think the
Sure.
globalist term has come from some of those people who used to tend to, and they still tend to lean traditionally to the right,
Sure.
the populist right is right. It means somebody who wants to have a one global governance. That's what it means. In other words, they want to have one rule of all, to rule all the nation states, to rule, so I mean, it's not really about the interest of the globe, but it's the person who want to have, so it's easier for them to control. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, well, they often conflate that with the United Nations, which is nonsense. The United Nations is a toothless talking shop and forum. There are in the globalists in the sense that people want to run the entire world, but that's simply called the U.S. government. I mean, that's U.S.-led Western global
I
hegemony.
get a feeling it's a little of the left-leaning side that rejects the term globalism, but that's okay. You're a leftist.
Sure,
like
yeah,
me. We're
yeah,
leftists.
yeah. I mean,
I got it.
I have some views today that are definitely considered right-wing, but I definitely come from a left-ish
Me too,
orientation.
baby.
You could say that.
Same
My wife
team.
is Elena's a card-carrying member of the Russian Communist Party. So,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be any surprise there. But I'm definitely not a Marxist or dogmatic in any sense like that. And this conflation of the Western postmodern liberalism with this woke gender ideology, right? I mean, that has nothing to do with leftism. That is not
Yeah.
leftism. That is liberalism, right? So yeah, I if you want to call them globalists, fine. I mean, if that's what knocks you off, I would prefer, um, you know, um, liberals simply, or
Ooh.
you could say the economic sense, neoliberals, which is an economic term, and neocons, which has nothing to do with conservatives. It's simply about the unbridled use of hard power around the world, right? Which is the terms. Anyway, so we're getting off. Are we in World War III? Yeah, World War III is at least starting as a number of smaller conflicts that are building, whose ultimate outcome, right, as they are all linked together, will be the determination of the future world order, right? And what are the options right? U.S.-led Western global hegemony, which is desperately trying to hold on to the unipolar moment of the 90s and the early 2000s. They believe that they have the right and the actual duty, right? They to run the world, that the entire world would be better off if it was made to look more like the United States, which, sorry, anyone still living in the US, but that gives me nightmares. Sorry. I don't want the
You
rest
don't
of the
want to move
world.
back home with us?
No, I've been gone for 20 years. I've no desire to come back. It's all whatever you guys want to do there, that's great. But trying to make the rest of the world look like you, no, thank you. Every time I see a McDonald's in Moscow. Oh, well, actually, there are no McDonald's in Moscow.
Yeah, you guys
anymore,
got something else now.
Yeah, I mean, they're McDonald's clones, but yeah, they do, because of sanctions, which is one of the best things that sanctions have, done for the country, for Russia anyway.
And I believe Putin signed to law, just to really quickly, since we're on the McDonald's thing that you love so much, that there's no GMOs in your food anymore, right? Like you can be charged or fined, or he threw it out the window. I mean, everyone, Putin's evil, but look what he did.
Yeah. I mean, there were never much, but yeah, GMOs are not in Russia. They're legally banned. May I just say that not only GMOs, but simply the amount of preservatives and chemicals in American food is just atrocious. I mean, I've lived outside the country now for 2 decades, and when I try something that is American loaded with that stuff, you can taste it. Oh my God, you can taste it, and I don't want that garbage in my body anymore. Thanks. I mean, not that I'm the healthiest guy around there.
Yeah, but your meat is a sign of good living. It's like real food,
I'm all for the food. So, I think, we're seeing a number of conflicts emerging now that are about that global order. And certainly the Russian intervention in the Ukrainian civil conflict, which is really just a NATO-Russia war at this point, right? You can even drop the proxy. It's useless even calling it that anymore. That is the most, current. But the Israeli-Palestinian conflict definitely is having global repercussions about the shaping of the future of the Middle East, which is still a crucial part of the world, right? We're not getting away from energy, from oil, gas anytime soon. And also the conflict that the U.S. is focused on, right? What they regard as an inevitable clash against China off its own coast in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Straits, along the lines of the Thucydides trap, right? The U.S. is brass geopolitical thinkers, right? The neocons, they're completely trapped in a Thucydides trap thinking. Thucydides was an ancient Greek political philosopher who basically talked about hegemony. And the theory is if there is a fading hegemon and a rising hegemon, then conflict is inevitable, right? And the U.S. completely believes that. We've heard numerous U.S. generals speaking, we're going to be at war in 5 years. I mean, they fully believe that. They're trading their people for that. That's not even a secret. And they're doing everything.
Mark, let me just stop you really quickly, because I don't know who they're training anymore, because the people that would normally go fight those wars, they call them domestic terrorists. And with the culture wars, they've kind of, I want to watch my step over here, but they've kind of sissied up some of the potential soldiers to go on the battlefield. They brought the culture war issues into the military, which is not something I think you really want to do. But and let me just also say, welcome Fiorella to the show. Back, this is Fiorella's show too, of course. It's on her YouTube and the Convo Couch. And fam, we were just having a great time here with Mark Sleboda, just reminiscing of the days and everything that now he's here. And obviously I've started my new guys, if you haven't gone to it, Pasta to Go, the number 2. So going to show some of the stuff I do when me and Fiorella are out and about in these other countries, or if I'm out somewhere. But welcome to the show, fam. How you doing?
Yeah, I just like to place my order, fettuccine Alfredo with chicken. Thanks.
You would do that. Real Italians don't eat fettuccine Alfredo. We
Whatever,
eat carbonara.
Whatever. I'll have some of that too.
Okay, I'll put chicken.
I'm doing pretty good. I am testing new internet, so we'll see how this is. I'm not quite sure about it yet. I might need to amp it up a little more. You know how it is with the internet. But yeah, I'm doing okay. Mark, how have you been?
I'm alive.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, long time no see. Even though we're in the same city.
Yeah, but you live he lives in another country, basically. Like he lives outside of. I am at
the very edge of the metro line in the south.
Mark's wife would have to throw me out of the house if I was in that same town, like literally, because can Mark come out and play? Like I'd be knocking on the door. I'd be coming over with game, and I'd be cooking in his kitchen, and I would be going nuts over there.
So
there's no excuse.
So you need to
Mark
visit.
Sleboda there.
This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm hearing. You need to visit.
Yes, I have to come visit. Yes.
Okay, good.
Fiorella, how close are you to RT Studios?
A 20-minute metro, probably. 20 minute metro.
Yeah, because it takes me like an hour and a half to get there out my door.
Yeah.
And they're always like, hey, can you come in and do a 3-segment for the news? I'm like, an hour and a half in, an hour and a half back, half an hour waiting there, add another 30 minutes. You want me to waste 4 hours of my day for a 3-hour segment when Skype and everything else exists? Yeah. It's hard to drag me out of my little forest reserve here.
Mark is like,
I know. I'm actually in the city. So it's kind of crazy right now. Yeah. So
and I'm literally on the edge of a forest reserve, which does exist in Moscow still.
So, fam, we got about 19 minutes left with Mark before he's got to get on out of here, because those shows we're talking about, he's got to get to them. We were talking about, guess what?
China.
So that was our president, Donald Trump, from the
China.
He was barking.
Okay.
China.
China. I'm like, what? Is that a venereal disease? What?
I love China.
And you know what?
Fake news.
Anyways, let's finish up with Mark. He's got about 18, 19 more minutes with us, so we want to give him a chance to finish on up. I'm gonna go refresh the coffee. I asked him a question, fam, and it was, "Are we in World War III?" Pretty much. And he's been kind of getting to it, talking about. He's been talking a little globalism, fam. I think there's a little tinfoil hat that's kind of peeking up behind him, but as a true leftist, he refuses to call the globalist. He calls them the United States of America, which is great. But that's where we're at. But if you wanted to take this and ask another question before he gets out of here, if you want to talk a little bit about Israel, Palestine, and stuff, please drive the bus. I'm going to grab a quick cup of coffee and come right on back.
Well, Mark, I mean, since we're, we were going to discuss this topic and we're on this topic, what do you think will happen now with the Ukraine conflict, where the U.S. is diverting its attention now by fully supporting Israel and also continuing to stoke conflicts with China via Taiwan? Where do you see the Russia, Ukraine going into this? I see it obviously going into the background. I see a lot of shifts, not just obviously in the usual suspects, but in the political world in Europe as well, where there seems to be a shift towards mocking Zelensky more than usual, towards completely just leaving him out. Where do you see this going from here?
Yeah, well, there's some rather, I think, overall interesting moves by the United States pushing for elections in the Kiev regime at a time of war where, according to even the Ukrainian constitution, there should not be elections. And it's kind of ridiculous, even the idea of having elections, right? You don't even control 20% of your own country. You're in the middle of an existential war for your regime. You've banned all the real opposition in political opposition in the country. Some 15 political parties banned, right? You've taken all media under control, right? Banned all critical media, one unified information policy. You're conducting a pogrom against the largest church in the country. But you know, the West still slaps the "we're fighting for democracy in Ukraine" label over this Banderite fascist regime. It's sickening. But why is the U.S. pushing for elections, right? I mean, no one needs that. The U.S. is pushing for elections because they want to get rid of Zelensky. They've lost confidence in him. They think that he is becoming unhinged, that he's contradicting NATO's battle plans for them, that he's overriding his own generals and diverting military resources, like particularly in the East, or this obsession with Bakhmut and now with Avdiivka, which diverted resources away from the big NATO planned, NATO trained, NATO armed, NATO proxy offensive in the South that failed. And the West now wants to blame that failure on him because he took resources away from it. They want to get rid of him. I think he's also just starting to grate on people's nerves. He's lost dignity. So they're prepared to switch horses to Zelensky, which is the Kiev regime's top general and a literal ideological Banderite fascist. The guy has 2 busts of Stepan Bandera in his office because one of them isn't enough. They appear to be pushing that. And polls, I mean, yeah, take polls in the Kiev regime with a grain of salt, but what we can say is that the polls say that Zelensky has more support now among the Ukrainian people than Zelensky. So it's very much a real thing. And Zelensky, his administration knows that the U.S. Is preparing to switch horses to Zelensky, and they're doing everything they can to stop it. He has said there will be no elections. He has opened up an investigation and taken some other political maneuverings that appear that the logical conclusion of them is to tar Zelensky and so forth, to soil his name. So, I mean, and he has admonished Zelensky publicly. The office of the president has, for an interview he did with The Economist, where he said the war is at a stalemate. The war is not at a stalemate. Ukraine is losing. The Kiev regime is losing. But even that was a step too far. He says it's panicking our allies and aiding Russia. So on top of that censure, he got rid of 2 of Zelensky's deputies in the past week. One of them he fired, and that was the head of special operations, Hornyenko. The U.S. military evidently loved working with him. They thought he was great. That came out of nowhere. They're like, why did they get rid of him? Because he was Zelensky's. That's why. And they also, the other deputy, he's dead now. Chastyakov was a close friend and deputy, an assistant to Zelensky, basically, Major Gennady Chastyakov. Yeah, he was celebrating his 39th birthday, and he had been given a gift bag, which he brought home with his family, and he opened it up. And there's a couple different stories about the way this exactly happened, but I think the best story is that it had some vodka, right? And like a novelty glass set that had vodka glasses, shot glasses that were made to look like grenades, and a particular German grenade type that has been supplied to the Kiev regime. So they took these glasses out. Only one of them was a real grenade. And the guy blew himself up and severely injured his own teenage son. This is either one of the most moronic accidents that you can possibly imagine, one of the most humiliating ways to go out of this world, or it was as a lot of the Ukrainian Telegram, the social media channels are saying, it was a targeted political assassination, taking a shot across the bow at Zelensky by the Zelensky administration. People are talking, the name they're tossing around is Yermak, which is Zelensky's powerful gray cardinal chief of staff. And they're saying this all is orchestrated by him. So basically what we have is the political and military leadership of the Kiev regime is on the verge of open warfare with each other. Now, this is definitely something that the U.S., that they don't want, right? They wanted elections because, let's face it, another U.S.-backed coup in Ukraine so soon after the one in 2014 was probably a not the preferred way of changing horses, but it doesn't appear that Zelensky is giving them any other options. But they don't want open conflict between the political and military leadership of their proxy regime. So they're going to try and tamp this down. Whether they're going to be successful or not, I don't know. But as to the future of the conflict, sure, the U.S., the amount of resources flowing to the Kiev regime is going to decrease. Artillery shells, air defense missiles, they're being diverted to Israel. The House, the Republicans are still playing partisan political games, trying to leverage a better term for border security before they hand over the money, which I believe they will ultimately do, to continue
I don't
funding
know about that.
Okay.
It seems, Mark, I just want to say real quick, it seems like, and I think Kurt Metzger made the statement best on Jimmy Dore's show, it's the fact that Zelensky in Ukraine was the side piece, and the United States says they're leaving their side piece. It's almost like The Sopranos when Tony Soprano was telling his Russian-Ukrainian girlfriend, no more, don't call me. I'm going back to my wife, and they're going back to their wife in Israel because it seems like they're not going to be able to get the funding because successfully a lot of the conservatives in America have been able to label this war with Ukraine and Russia as Biden's war. The same way they were able to label the Iraq war as Bush's war. Therefore, they can put all of the blame and the money wasted on Biden and the Democrats. Please continue.
Yeah, sure. Except that there still is broad bipartisan consensus in the Congress and in the House and the Senate The 10 or 11 Republicans that make up the Freedom Caucus, they've successfully taken Congress hostage over the issue, although probably not out of any principled reasons. But they're not going to be able to do it indefinitely. I think the money flow will continue at the end of the day. But still, the Kiev regime is going to have less resources ultimately, if only because the U.S. military-industrial complex can't ramp up production of artillery, shells, air defense missiles, these crucial things they need. The New York Times admitted that Russia is outproducing not just the U.S., but all of NATO, but in artillery shells, a vital component of a war of attrition, by 7 times. Not me, not Russian propaganda, not Fee over there, but the New York Times, right? 7 times, right? So, but that doesn't mean that the Kiev regime is necessarily going to collapse. I don't believe in collapse scenarios. The Russian government hoped that the Kiev regime would collapse economically for 10 years before they finally got off their butts and did something. I don't believe in military collapse either. They will simply go on the defensive, and they can drag this out for years. And I think it will go on yet at least for another year, probably longer than that. It's going to be Russia is winning, but the costs are high. It doesn't mean that Russia is not taking damage, that troops aren't dying every day, that, this assault on Avdiivka, this top fortress city of the Kiev regime, it is succeeding slowly, tree line by tree line, fortress, but, fortified location by fortified location, but it has a stiff cost because this still is a near peer competitor. It's the reality of modern warfare. They're out of artillery shells, so they switch to FPV drones, which they're flying in the hundreds. Now Russia has more, but it doesn't mean that it won't be a long, bloody, costly slog to finish this thing. But I think it will be. And I don't think that Russia is interested in any ceasefire on any terms that the U.S. would find acceptable.
I'm so sorry, Fee, and Mark, I don't mean to jump in it, but I'm just dying to know, is there any chance at all that, and I know this is probably going to be a quick no, but I can't understand. I don't see any type of chance of peace with Ukraine and Russia unless the Russian Federation takes Kiev. I mean,
yeah. The head of the Russian National Security Council, Patrushev, spoke about it just this week. And he said there are rational people in Ukraine who are prepared to take power. Right? That's what he's saying. He's the batter pointing over the pitcher's head saying, that's where we're going. Regime change. That's the only way this ends.
Yeah. And Russia has said they will sit down on the table as long as they literally aren't asked to give up Donbass, to give up all of the territories that they have already become part of the Russian
They're never
Federation,
giving that
including
up.
Crimea.
Yeah.
No, but that's what the U.S. uses to say, well, Russia doesn't want peace. No, Russia's like, yeah, we'll sit down and have talks, but only if you stop with this bullshit.
Only on our terms that we went into.
What about Odessa, though?
With. Okay, so there's a lot of Russians who don't believe that anything less than all of East Ukraine separated from the regime in Kiev, anything less than that, including Odessa and Kharkov, would be a failure. And I'm one of those. I think that at a minimum, all of East Ukraine has to be liberated from this regime. These are Russian-speaking, Russian, leaning areas. Whether they're ethnic Russians or East Ukrainians. I mean, my family's from. My wife is from Crimea, from Simferopol. We have family there, but we also have family in Odessa and Kharkov and Donetsk. And I know what the people there, what they're like, what they believe, and I don't believe this is finished. Hopefully, it will go further to remove the regime in Kiev as well. But at a minimum, yes. And Odessa that's probably the most dangerous moment, because the U.S. will still, no matter how far it goes, will want a proxy Ukrainian rump state, and they will want a port for it. They won't want it to be landlocked, which means they'll have to hang on to Odessa. So that is going to be a moment, and that's exactly why the 101st Airborne is positioned in Romania, just across the border, ready to send as a tripwire force into Odessa.
And I would assume that if the Russian Federation takes Odessa, you'd never really be able to see Ukraine be a threat the way they were this last time out, because they would lose all their sea rights. So in other words, it would be a good, what do you call it when you neuter? It would be a good neutering of any potential, Banderite fascist country.
Yeah, considering that
to come after us.
Yeah, considering that a military occupation of West Ukraine with the dominant nationalist ideology there, the Banderism, if 50, 60 years of the Soviet Union couldn't knock the Banderism out of West Ukraine, if Stalin couldn't do it, then I don't think that a relatively sissy Putin in comparison to Stalin is going to be able to do it either. So that is... I'm sorry. He's a moderate when it comes to Russia. I mean, totally. If the regime change Putin, everything will get better. No, if you get rid of Putin, there'll be someone a lot worse than Putin that will take the fore in Russia. That's the reality.
Very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Well, it's the top of the hour, dude, and you got to get out of here. Our good friend Don Dore is jumping in right now. We got some stuff to go over. I want to hear really quickly before you leave, Mark Sleboda, hey, Ryan, I have Mark Sleboda here. He's getting a little tinfoil hatty like in the truther community. He won't use the term globalist completely, but I think you guys would do great. Have you guys ever met each other before or worked with each other before?
I think we've overlapped in the past, but I don't think we've ever officially worked. It's nice to meet you, Mark. In
Ryan,
it would be an amazing show. Yeah. It would be an amazing show. You guys should set it up.
Well, I've eaten his cooking, okay? His cooking is good. He's a good cook, too.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mark
not as good as pasta, though. Not as good as pasta.
Yeah, pasta.
Right. Mark, you got to get out of here. Tell people where they can find you, and thank you for coming with us on this day when I'm starting my new Rumble channel. You've been one of my favorites for quite some time, and I love you,
on
brother,
the Conversation Couch. Thank you.
You missed it, Sharon. You were late. You said it. Please tell everybody where they can find you and get on out of here.
Yeah, The Real Politic with Mark Sleboda on Substack, on Telegram. Those are the two best places to follow me. I have a YouTube channel as well, but I don't get I'm too busy to update to do a lot of videos. So Telegram, Substack, Twitter, and technically I still have a Facebook. But does anyone actually look on that anymore?
Yes,
I don't think
so. Still do. They still do.
Okay. Well, I mean, maybe your grandmother does, Pasta. But
she does.
Yeah.
From the grave. We love you, Mark Sleboda. We look forward to seeing you soon, buddy. Go get it.
Nice meeting you, Mark.
Cheers. Hey, Don, tag team, take over for me, man.
Thank you, brother.
Oh, man.